Okay, we're going to make a start. So apologies for the slight delay, but I think a lot of us got delayed in other meetings this morning. Item 1, so apologies for non-attendance.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Fiona Baker, with Councillor Greg Lunn substituting, from Councillor Zoe McGee, with Councillor Valerie Anslow substituting, and apologies also from Councillors Ken Pritchard and Russell Roberts, no substitutes for those.
And if I can just say, not an apology, but an alert that the Commissioner is incoming, and we'll see in 1 moment.
Helicopters on the way down.
Incoming Commissioner, excellent. And do you have any notifications of requests for the public to speak?
No, Chair.
Okay, so declarations of interest, does anyone have any declarations of interest?
No.
Okay, should you suddenly realise you have, just raise your hand. So Chair's announcements. Well, just one thing really is this is going to be the last meeting of this panel in this room. So we'll be meeting in Angel Square as of next year. So I'm going to say thank you for the meeting this afternoon. So we'll trust that. And then reference to the, so item 5, minutes from the 19th of September, the confirmation hearing. I think we've got the 23rd of October's meeting as well. Any observations, thoughts on the minutes? Captain Simons, thank you. So just one thing, it seems an awful lot of members of the panel this afternoon have got to go to other meetings. So if we can, obviously we want to get a good full meeting, but if we can be brisk in our comments or whatever, that would be beneficial to those who go to those meetings later. Okay, so item 6, neighbourhood policing. We've got Adam Ward here this afternoon. Welcome, Adam. And you're going to be introducing the yourself.
Well, can I take that space if that's all right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just to introduce Adam as the Assistant Chief Constable in charge of local policing in the force. We've spoken at the panel about how it would be good to bring some really crunchy items about operational policing and fire to the panel. Last time we had Scott Chilton from the fire side talking about built environment, protection, and the role that you can play in some of your capacity as panel, but also in roles as councillors and others to support that. Today's item is again really core business. This is essentially the neighbourhood policing blueprint. It's something we've been discussing with the police since the Commissioner came into office. And at the first briefing on this, she was very quick to say this is perfect material for the panel and really wanted this event to get into the diary. So I'm pleased that we have that in the diary today. It chimes very well with what you'll hear later about the plan as well, in terms of that focus on neighbourhood accessible services, of which local policing is at the heart. And very timely. You woke up, like me, with the Today programme this morning, you've heard the Home Secretary talking about exactly this topic. So I'll pass to Adam at that point, if that's all right with you, Chair.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we all saw the news, but I did get my calculator out, and that was an interesting sum that did on the screen. So anyway, Adam.
I think I need to go over there to share.
Unless you need to do the briefing.
No, that's fine. Right, I think I've got 20 minutes. 20 minutes? Yep. I'll use that time wisely then. Right, so this is about the neighbourhood blueprints. Effectively what this is outlining what the Northamptonshire police approach to neighbourhood policing will look like. And it's quite different to some of the things we've done in the past. So I've previously briefed people on this and it could take hours, so I've deliberately gone to the most poignant part. So if there's any questions, then I'm welcome on afterwards. So move it down and go to work. So, the principle of the blueprint and our neighbourhood policing approach moving forward is predicated on basically a social capital approach and being a more proactive neighbourhood policing team. So, just like a history of neighbourhood policing and policing in general, and this diagrammatic view is supposed to show that. Essentially, policing has been very reactive throughout history, and it reacts to problems before when they come around, and the issue of that, certainly in Northamptonshire, is that's predicated and based on the population mass. So we're one of the fastest growing counties in the country. To be able to react to crime and crime trends is pretty much impossible just through logical reasoning. So the whole premise of the neighbourhood blueprint is to be proactive in terms of tackling some of those aspects that blight our communities before they blossom into some significant issues. The idea being is if we can proactively tackle some of these issues, that then frees up some of our demands to be able to tackle some of those other aspects and then reinvest that police time into other avenues of importance. So that's, if you take anything away from here today, the whole blueprint is based around proactive social capital based work. So moving along. Some of the key elements that I'll talk about today are on the right of the slide. So Operation Revive, which follows the clear hole build, capable guardianship programmes, our enhanced community engagement, collaborative communities, and problem solving aspects. So moving on to the first aspect then. So Operation Revive is a programme that I started specifically in 2019. It is going until this day. It is essentially a programme that looked at our highest output areas. There's very different terminology across the country in relation to them. We call them super output areas, left behind areas, but we call them local priority areas. And in essence, these are areas that have been forgotten about in terms of services, approach, and people in these areas experience the highest levels of crime and have done so for decades. So the whole idea around Operation Revive is to assist people in those communities, not to just get policing outcomes, but to make those places better for people to live across the board. So those outcomes look at better quality of life, better service provision, and not just reductions in crime, which we've done prior. So we've, under the neighbourhood blueprint, we identified initially 2 areas on the north, but that has now been rolled out to 6 areas across the county. And the impact, like we said before, in terms of that proactive policing approach, is to try and turn off some of those crime taps that pour criminality into the rest of the county. There's been some tremendous results in relation to Operation Revive, some of which are highlighted there, but in the most recent performance updates around the activity of the programme, those areas that are some of the most difficult areas to police in the county have experienced a 50% or more reduction in serious acquisitive crime and a more than double increase in competence and satisfaction in those areas. So we're very proud of the work we've been doing there and continue to do that, and it forms some of the backbone of the neighbourhood policing approach to tackling some of those higher level community issues. Next element is a particular focus of our approach is around capable guardianship and a county-wide approach. This isn't a new theory, this is based around that triangle at the top, which is routine activity theory, which basically says that if you have some form of capable guardianship in an area, you will deter or prevent some form of crime type. So the idea around this is to make this a county-wide and partnership and social capital-based programme in which we can work with partner agencies, communities, commercial entities to provide a scalable level of capable guardianship across the county to prevent those kind of things from happening. We already do that in a programme that was started from funding from the government in relation to Op Reassure, which is ASB patrols across the county, which have dramatically reduced ASB in certain areas, but the idea being is that we would go from some of those higher level areas of concern where we would have police officers doing visible hotspot patrols in certain locations akin to the Revive programme, all the way down to local community street watch programmes and those people getting involved where we could put capable guardianship into those areas to deter some of those precursor criminality aspects like low-level ASB and all those kind of aspects. So Street Watch specifically was relaunched in September, and we're pushing hard to get community members involved so they can work with us to grow this programme across the county. With the first real county to look at this in a county-wide aspect, quite aspirational. Again, like I said, previously predicated on social capital, working with our communities to make the county safer. Next would be collaborative communities. In the middle, I've highlighted our visibility figures. We're one of the only forces that actually measures our visibility in the communities. And when you look at those numbers, when you consider that officers have to have breaks, they have to go into the police stations to get briefings and arrest people, they're quite significant in terms of the amount of time our officers and staff actually spend out in the community teams with their communities. So the target is 65%, and we regularly are closer to 70% in terms of officer and police so time in those communities. Some of those aspects that we want to concentrate on and have already started, and I'm pleased to announce we've done already two, is the Community Weeks of Action. So that's identifying and working with communities, probably through the LAP areas, parish councils, etc. And identifying those individuals to work with so we can target aspects that affect those communities specifically. So you're probably aware of locally identified priorities, and then they get, we survey people in those local communities to find out what matters to them. This is about working with those local communities to target those aspects that are important to those. So it could be speeding, it could be ASB, those are those are some of the commonalities that people talk about. And again, this idea is about bringing communities together and working hand in hand in partnership to try and tackle some of those aspects. The aspiration being that every parish in the county we will have Community Weeks of Action with support and potentially funding from other sources that we can get it to seed funding to help individuals set up sustainable programmes of work where they can complete their own weeks of action assisted by the police. It's built on a concept that we started in Northamptonshire Police in 2024 around our own force-wide weeks of action and had great success. So it follows that and the natural transition into that social capital arena. The next aspect is significantly improving our community engagement, because I think, and there's a video that I'll present at the end if it will work, there still is, in my mind at least, a disconnect between police and communities. And now if I was to probably do a straw poll of what people thought neighbourhood policing meant and what it was about and what PCSOs did, you'd probably have some different views in relation to what that was. So the community engagement aspect is absolutely key to gaining people understanding about policing and being able to work with those communities that often we really struggle to engage with to get their views, to make sure that our service is tailored in the right ways. One of those programmes is a system called Northamptonshire Talking, which is based on the Neighbourhood Alert programme. We now have over 45,000 members county-wide. We want to grow that to at least 10% of our county population, to at least 80,000 and more, so we can communicate on a multilingual level with different sections of the community, because at the moment we've been traditional communication through social media aspects, which is more advanced for us, but it tends to be English only and those kind of aspects. So that platform enables us to engage much more diverse sections of the community. It's been extremely successful, and the ratings for our communications through that platform are in the 90% in terms of the feedback that we get. And then working, I think one of the last sections that I'll talk about is problem solving and preventative community safety. So the government has talked about ASB and the importance of it. We recognise that in terms of those aspects as well. It goes back to the predication of the model when I talked about earlier. Having low-level problem solving is as important as having problem solving that looks to tackle some of those significant organised crime issues. So neighbourhood disputes that turn into ongoing aspects that take valuable police resources, ASB that lingers and proliferates in the town centres, etc. These are all elements that should be problem solved out at an early start to prevent the serious harm that they can cause and perceive, and the perception of fear. This is working through the problem-solving approach and having that preventative mindset amongst all our neighbourhood policing officers and PCSOs to tackle those issues early on and make sure they don't grow into more significant aspects. So this is just a slide that highlights some of the real differences that will come under the neighbourhood blueprint. I've already talked about Operation Revive and community weeks of action, measurable community engagement. One aspect I haven't included because I was conscious of time was around our CIP and targeted approach, so that's citizens in policing. So when I look at that is our specials cohort, with the first force in the country to have a performance framework and actually measure the output that our specials will give us. So traditionally police forces had volunteers come in and they would measure the number of hours that they came and worked with the police, and that would be a success measure. It's quite ineffective to actually say that that's helped policing. So the way in which we're looking at it now is integrating the special constables and other parts of the CIP programme into the neighbourhood blueprint, so we can show the value that they bring, not only to communities, but also to make those programmes more sustainable and attract more people into those positions. Because frankly, a lot of specialists would tell us, and other volunteers would say, I really like doing it, but I don't know what I do help, so other than a thank you. So that's part and parcel of that approach in terms of what we do. So that is a very whistle-stop tour of the neighbourhood blueprint. Before I go any further and go into questions, if it will work, because it may not work, I'll show you just a quick video that we've had made. And the reason for it being is I alluded to this in the beginning. So we want to be really transparent, open around what neighbourhood policing is and what Northamptonshire offering of neighbourhood policing looks like, which includes all those aspects that I've talked about. So the idea being is that similar videos will follow to explain how you can get involved in some of those elements under the blueprint. But firstly, you really want to go out and actually explain to people, this is what we do, this is what is the offering, this is what you can expect and hold us to account for in terms of neighbourhood policing. The video's in draft format at the moment, it's not gone out, but again it's multilingual, so it's going to be in 6 or 7 of the most prevalent languages in the county, and it gives people a real grounding of what Northamptonshire is about and what we're going to be doing in neighbourhood policing. Of course, now that I've built it up, it probably won't work.
Can I just this is being broadcast on YouTube, so you're happy for that to go out?
That's absolutely fine, yeah. So I shall take it from the beginning. I don't know if the volume will work, but I shall try and make it work.
Every area of Northamptonshire has a dedicated neighbourhood policing team supported by policing staff, special constables and volunteers. Neighbourhood policing teams work to improve local conditions and help create stronger, safer communities in our towns and villages. Together with partners and communities, they agree what needs to be done to tackle and resolve local issues that affect people's safety and quality of life, and provide feedback on what's being done and what's been achieved. As well as tackling crime and antisocial behaviour on their patch, you'll see officers out and about patrolling their area and carrying out activities such as beat bus surgeries, attending residents' meetings, or giving talks to school and community groups. Neighbourhood officers strive to be a visible, accessible and trusted presence within the community, working to reduce harm and improve feelings of safety. They use a range of problem-solving skills to tackle and prevent crime, and work closely with partners such as the council, housing associations, youth and social services, as well as local residents to resolve local issues. Working alongside hate crime specialists and community engagement officers, our neighbourhood teams strive to create dialogue and build stronger relationships with their diverse communities. When you call 999 about a crime, response officers will respond promptly, helping victims, compiling crime reports, identifying suspects and making arrests. Teams will then work together to investigate the incident, charge offenders and prepare cases for court. This is reacting to a crime after it's happened and working to get justice for victims. Neighbourhood policing looks to identify issues early and proactively prevent crime by addressing root causes and seeking long-term sustainable solutions. Our neighbourhood officers do this by working with the community and partners to identify issues of concern, for example, by conducting ongoing local priority surveys or gathering information from local residents about suspicious activity. This enables them to implement strategies to address persistent issues such as antisocial behaviour, speeding, retail crime, drug dealing and misuse, offences that affect the rural community and much more. Police community support officers are an integral part of neighbourhood policing teams, working alongside police officers to reduce crime and antisocial behaviour. They have a range of designated legal powers, while also getting involved in responding to a wider range of non-criminal issues to improve public safety and protect the vulnerable. They're able to become familiar with their local community, gathering intelligence, carrying out targeted patrols, and providing a reassuring, visible, and accessible presence in towns and villages across the county. Neighbourhood policing is about community and working with and for local people to make your neighbourhood a safer place. There are lots of ways you can get involved too, from telling us what concerns you about your local area or sharing information about suspicious activity, to joining a watch scheme or volunteering as a special constable, police support volunteer or emergency services cadet. To find out more about how to get involved and for information about your neighbourhood team, who your local officers are and what they are doing to tackle crime in your area, visit northants.police.uk. For regular updates about local policing activity, with messages in your chosen language and opportunities to give feedback and contact your local officers, sign up to our community messaging service, Northamptonshire Talking.
There we have it. Obviously you'll all be asking me now how to join up with the Northamptonshire Talking. I'm happy to guide you through that process. So there you go.
Thank you. That was pretty good. So we will get home this evening. So what did you do today? Well, we went to a film premiere. So I thought it was really interesting. I think certainly from neighbourhood policing, just walking up from Angel Square before this afternoon, we almost got wiped out by an electric bike going up a hill, not being pedalled. So that told me there's something not quite right with that bicycle, and I think that's one of the real focus. I think we all see on a regular basis. I think that I'd love to see a drive to address that. I think that the Commissioner only had a letter this week, I think, around this, didn't you?
I did, indeed. Chair, before you answer questions, I'm sure people all have got questions and comments to make. Can I apologise for being late? I couldn't get out of my house because of the Rushmere Junction roadworks. I had to wait to be rescued, so sorry about that. Can I also just comment that I don't know what other people think about this strategy, but when I was first shown it, I was really, really delighted because it seems to me to be an amazing response to what we've been hearing from the public. And, you know, what we want is for the public to see echoes of what they've said to us in everything that we say and everything that we do. And just to let you know, we had this week a meeting with the parish councils, and there are a couple of parish councils that don't feel that they're being looked after by their PCs and their PCSOs, but most of them were reporting that they did. And so we know we've got work to do, but that was really gratifying to hear, in actual fact. And on my rounds to different areas, different communities, I am being told without asking that people are finding that they are seeing more visible policing in lots of different communities. So I'm really, really pleased about that. So it's not just a strategy, it's also having an impact.
Councillor Answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of say something following on from that. I was really pleasantly surprised to get an email this week as a councillor in Wellingborough telling me who the police officers are for the town, introducing themselves, which we've not had before. And I think that's probably part of the same process because, as you know, the police officers change quite regularly, they're moved around, and us as councillors don't always keep up with it because we're not informed. So thank you for that. That was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I think the film is going to be a real conversation starter, isn't it? Because it's got some information that I've learned a few bits and pieces there, and I think that being part of the the solution or whatever to be that proactiveness is we've got a part to play, haven't we, as the general public, to be proactive because it is our communities, isn't it? So, Councillor Gonzalez.
Thanks, Chairman. A couple of things. One, the film's good, but it's just too long. My only comment would be to try and keep the interest going, depending what the audience is. Certainly, if you're going to launch it on TikTok or something of that nature, it needs to be a sort of 15-second type hit with it. I think it's a really important role. Neighbourhood policing is absolutely critical. We've all gone about stressing how important visible policing is, and there's response and there's proactive visible policing, isn't there? In fact, only in the distance we can just hear a siren going off there and a patrol car of some sort, I imagine, or a response car. It is concerning. I was at one of the parish councils, I think, Madam Commissioner, that you might have been aware of, West Hunsbury Parish Council. Have not seen a police officer for a long time. They themselves said it in a public meeting and in the policing public session. Again, there wasn't a police officer present, and I'm sure that's down to resources, but I know that they did send a report in ahead of time, which is very useful. So I'd urge you, where at all possible, to make those contacts and to perhaps feed that information through. There is a real genuine concern that the only time that members of the public do see police officers is when they're sitting behind a van, and a speeding van, or there's a response to an incident. That's not obviously the case, we know that. In some countries, I do know that they operate a system where the majority of their officers are in plain clothes and therefore unmarked cars, and it's very then difficult to understand exactly where a police officer is, but it's even better because a criminal then just is on the wear, should we say, very wary of the concerns of police officers following up their activities. So that might be something that you might want to take on board. Thank you.
Thanks. So we've got Councillor Maxwell followed by Councillor Rattle.
Good morning. I actually would like to follow up on this business about PCSOs being out in the community or even the police, because the villages that I represent, we haven't seen anybody since probably July. We know we've got a PCSO in Oundle, which is supposed to support the whole of, so that's the whole of Oundle, and then all the villages around Oundle coming right up. Actually, I don't know about Rush and what's happening there, but in Northamptonshire, we haven't seen anybody. So whether it's because they're not aware when the meetings are, that's one thing. But the other issue is, I think it'd be quite good actually. I mean, we've got not only a large area, but we've got a population of young people, children who clearly there are issues with some children, and one of them being that drugs are being passed between, well, I would say that young people are being recruited to actually pass drugs around, and I think that that's something that really does worry me, because it's, it's on the increase, it's not on the decrease, and I just think that we just need to know that there's somebody out there keeping an eye on what is going on, and equally, it would be quite useful if we knew what you are finding out. What do you find out regarding the drug trade and what's going on? So,
Chair, could I respond to that? Would that be all right?
Well, we'll just follow through with each of the councillors, and then if you come in, so I've got
Well, to that particular point about Oundle, could I just respond to that?
I think it's not questions to Anne rather
just
than the
making
Commission.
comments.
I think so. Come at the end. So thank you.
Anyway, so that's my view. I think that perhaps, I'm not sure about West, what's happening in West, but I know in North that we would quite like to see a presence of something being in the villages. You know, even if they just popped in, would be quite useful, because just the visibility of somebody walking down the road will make people sit up and look and think about what they are looking, you know, coming down. Whereas at the moment, it's a free-for-all. I just think that's the impression. I know you've had some serious accidents our way at the moment, particularly on the A14 and the A45, and that's another issue. But I do think that I like the idea of interacting with people whose language is not English, and that's a big thing our way, where we have lots of residents whose English is second language, and they can't communicate at all. And the parents, can't communicate, but the children can communicate in English, but they don't necessarily communicate in English the right things that their parents should want to listen to. Thank you.
It's quite a lot in that, so I think your main question was around visibility.
Yeah.
So it's not an uncommon question, so it's quite nuanced in terms of how you approach it, but I'll give some kind of overview and then some hopefully some reassurances. So we tend to never win with the visibility aspect, because if communities see officers more, it can perpetuate fear. And we get that feedback quite regularly, and we've surveyed this and done like control studies on it in the past, in terms of if we flood an area with police officers, then that tends to we tend to see in our locally identified priority surveys, etc., that the fear of crime goes up, which is not good, and that's counterintuitive, but it does. So it's about getting a fine balance. And then the other aspect is we often find that we will put officers into areas, and the majority of those areas will work 9 till 5. So certainly in winter months, if you're not at home and you're looking out the window when that officer happens to walk by, you wouldn't see them. So we're always battling those kind of aspects. But some of the work we're doing to tackle that is our online presence. So that won't work for everybody, because there are certain generations and certain people that won't be too interested in that. But we want to have a real focus on our online presence for those that are, because whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, most people have smartphones nowadays and are all connected. So we do that in terms of those aspects. We also advertise where we are going to be at certain times and locations. So if I use the beat bus as an example, on our website and through our Northamptonshire Talking platform, it will indicate exactly where the beat bus is going to be months in advance. So if people want to speak to a police officer, or they want to have a question for a community surgery, that'll be published there. Specifically in relation to, it was Bridgeton and...
Well, no, it's Woodford and villages going up to Landor.
So the villages probably have the least police presence, because they're statistically the safest places, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't see police presence. So part of the work we try and do with the PLRs, and the Commissioner already alluded to it before, it's a work in progress, and it's certainly not where it needs to be. But the idea being is that we will have a PSO or officer assigned to each one of those parish areas, and they will attend those important community meetings they need to be at, and we want to get to as many of those as possible. So in the very least, when those congregations come together and those people have those issues, we have some police presence there, because it's hit or miss whether or not you'll see us walking down the street. We've had major instances in some rural areas, flooded the area with police officers, and no one's even known about it. So the real importance for us is to come when the community is all together, so we can get that message and be seen. So that feedback's already been provided, and it's something we're working to achieve, because it's 212 or 213 parishes.
That's right.
So it's important that we get along to all of those and listen to the concerns and talk to those community members.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you. It's like a breath of fresh air to me, actually. I really liked the video. I thought it was really simple and easy to watch. And, you know, I'll be sharing that. I have signed up to Northamptonshire Talking, and I do share that across my social media page. I really like the Op Revive. I've had some residents get in touch with me this week, actually, to say that there is using those electric bikes that there is an increase in drug dealing going on, using those electric bikes. How do I report it? And obviously a lot of people want to stay anonymous. So for me, that would be really good. I can direct them straight to that. Because generally I just say, you know, what sort of time, you've got any details, you know, all the usual stuff. We get police at our town council meetings, but they're always invited, because that's the other thing, you need to know when they're happening rather than looking up, encourage your parishes to invite them along, and you'll generally get somebody if they're not out on you know, a serious tour somewhere. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the police in my area. I know a lot of them are in plain clothes because I do a night shift, so I see a lot of them going or coming in to the station early in the morning, so I know they're about. Actually, when I was out this week, I see a plainclothes car pull somebody over, so like you're saying, they're not like new cars. You know, this was a car that was probably about 8 or 9 years old. You would no way would you think it was an unmarked police car. So, you know, I really like what you're doing. I like the fact that you are connecting with the communities, because that is absolute key. And I'm sure it'd be great going forward. So thank you.
Pauline.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that interesting presentation. I listened to Councillor Anslow speak about getting a list and knowing exactly who's the policing responsible person in area. For me, sitting as an independent member of this panel, not a councillor, not a parish councillor, as a local person, for me that video, some adage to it possibly could be where you say to local people, this is where you go to find out the information, as in who to contact in terms of your local PCSO. Because I don't know who they are where I live, and I've always taken a great interest in the areas that I live to know what's what. You also mentioned earlier about visible policing, and that, you know, you're trying to do more online stuff. For me, past experience has shown that if you've got visible policing in the community, it means that people can approach conversations at any time, any level, and nobody feels that, do you see what I mean? Like, oh, the police has just come around to see X, Y, Z, and they're talking to that person today, so they know exactly what's going on. If they're visible all the time, I think it builds that community engagement, that relationship that you're looking to build, as well as the trust in terms of sharing information. So I just wanted to say that as well. Okay, so local people matters, who are not councillors, who are not parish councillors. How do they get the information that they need?
I totally agree. So the PLR and the parish council meetings is a way of trying to target mass engagement opportunities for local, certainly the whole community is where it's at, isn't it? So it's very difficult to go to people individually. So as a start for 10, and I don't always like to talk about online stuff, because as we know, there's sections of the community that don't do online, but if you do go onto our website, all the details of our offices are there, so people can find it there. And the reason I would direct people to that is through no fault of the organisation or anybody. People move on, they change roles, so it's very difficult to say to you today, oh, your PCSO is Adam Ward, because in a week's time it might not be. So that online resource is always going to be the most up to date. However, in terms of our community engagement, I'm really invested, and you know, when I talked about this, the social capital aspect is about coming to people and meeting them in their communities. So building those contacts is absolutely key and pivotal. We know we've got lots of work to do in our diverse communities. We're still not trusted in black communities and some of the Asian communities, and we need to do a lot of work in relation to that. So you're quite right. The truth of the matter is we don't have a magic wand in relation to how this happens, but the way we get there is, you know, to not sound too corny, is to go hand in hand with our communities. So your feedback, whether it's through Northamptonshire talking platforms, whether it's individually, whether it's when we send beat buses out into those areas, is really pivotal, because where we send our resources, like beat buses, for example, when we have them out 24/7 continuously trying to engage with people, is really important, because I make this point to my senior leadership all the time. Us sending them out when, where we think is right is the wrong approach. We should be speaking to the community and saying, when do you want these resources, and we will send them. So it needs to be targeted as a service as opposed to a force.
Can I have a follow-up point on that, please, Joe?
Yeah, and then just
a
quick
quick
one, so
It's
absolutely,
just a
yes.
quick one.
Yeah, cool.
In terms of working with young people, I know you go into schools and things like that, but I wonder if there's any link in maybe piloting something with a young kind of workforce neighbourhood watch team, because young people are key and have a lot of information that live in local areas, and I think that sometimes they're missing a little bit of the pie in terms of early interaction with the work of policing locally. So I think that's another way to get it outside of the cadets, so maybe that's something to look into in terms of encouraging.
No, couldn't agree more. So some of the work we're doing around our independent advisory groups, IAGs, we've just started and set up our first youth IAG. The idea being that we will have youth IAGs in every town that sit alongside those IAGs and they're integrated, because we really struggle to hear the voice of the youth. And traditionally it's who shouts loudest, it gets listened to, and we need to spend more time listening than we do speaking, really. So we've got our first youth IAG set up, take anyone's advice on how we can get more support in relation to that. I think as we get one and then we start to understand what their needs are and what they want from us as a service, then we'll start to grow that across the county and get better engagement. Because, you know, my great hope and aspiration, we talked about all that social capital based work, and normally when I speak about that kind of thing, most people go to adults and what all the stuff they can do, but a lot of this needs to be targeted across those generations, and getting youth organised and integrated is really important. Hence the focus that we have on the cadets programme and trying to pass that message through those people to their peers at schools and those kind of things. But you're quite right, fully supportive of it. But if anyone's got any ideas on how we can improve it, then I'm the first one to listen.
Thank you. So we've got two more speakers then. I know the passion from the Commissioner around youth, so I'm sure you will comment. So we've got Councillor Carr, then Dr Cuss, then we will go to the Commissioner, and then we'll close this item. We really tired of time. So.
Adam, thank you for that. It's interesting because quite often with all these things, they're reinventions of things which have happened, or amalgamations of things. At one point, we used to have, certainly in Wellingborough, a rural and an urban JAG meeting, and it was all about relationship building with different partners sitting around the tables, and they used to work really, really well at problem solving more than anything else. Some things which were not, in theory, police matters, but it was things that things like highways and grounds maintenance could do to improve mobility, security, health and safety, or whatever. So I do really welcome this. I think what the other point is with this is also understanding where things slightly overlap with the police and don't. The amount of times that I'm sure we all get complaints about people parking on WLO lines, and in particular in stupid places around schools as well, and the fact that you know traffic wardens are the aspects which need to be called in with those, and that's about that relationship buildings with parish councils. Now, my experience of that relationships with the police and parish councils is really good. The area that I represent, we've got some excellent police officers who send us, monthly crime stats, who are very clear about their approach, saying they will come to a parish council meeting if requested. Obviously, if not, they won't come. Crime stats, not always necessarily helpful because there's no details. When you read things on it where it says, there's a possession of drugs or whatever it is, then you find out that a car has been stopped going through the parish. It's nothing to do with something in the village, it's to do with a passing aspect. So sometimes they're a little bit skew-whiffed, I suppose you could say. And when an officer comes along, they do actually explain things very clearly to us. We do have police surgeries, and that really helps, certainly from that presence point of view. I did think it was quite interesting about how you put speed humps in your video. It's one thing that whenever you ask highways, they won't implement at all. Whenever I've had conversations with them in the past about speed bumps, even though local communities ask for them, it just doesn't happen. But, as you quite rightly say, those conversations with community groups is always worth having. And it comes down to that very key thing that you were highlighting, it's about relationship building all the time. I was always brought up to be slightly scared of the police, and I still am, I hasten to add, even at my age, that they are a force to be respected, but also a force that you can trust and rely on as well at the same time. So carry on the good work, Adam. Thank you.
As a quick response to that, if I may.
Brief, please.
Very brief. So the Home Office and lots of people are interested in stats and statistics, and you can be a statistician for the police from all the data that we receive, but hopefully you've got that feel from what the core of neighbourhood policing is. And as a lead for competence and satisfaction, prevention, intervention, all these kind of elements that are so important for police. For me, it's far more important that we measure those kind of aspects in terms of confidence in our communities in the service, and I use the distinction between service and force quite regularly because we're there to serve the public, not enforce aspects on them. But I'm much more interested in the feedback in terms of the feel and what it feels like for people. Are they scared in their communities? Do they feel safe? Do they feel supported by their local police? Because ultimately, stats around how many this and how many that are not important if you haven't got those other things in place. So that's the whole premise of where we're going with the neighbourhood policing.
Thank you. Dr. Cuss.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed the presentation. Like Pauline, I'm an independent panel member. And a couple of points really for me. You talk about proactive policing and partnership, which I like partnership. My question is, have you had an opportunity yet to link with like the place-based model and the asset model that's been around for a while in the integrated care system? Because in there sits a lot of partners. And one key partner is a GP. And a GP is confronted daily by people who are on the receiving end of being in these situations and affecting their mental health and well-being. So that might be a place where you want to connect, because actually you'll gain a lot of information from that. And then the other thing just to mention is you talked about the community weeks of action and parish council. I'd advocate that parish council should put some money in them, because actually they're taking money off local communities. And I live in a local parish and I'm desperate for something to happen. And I'd be more than happy for my taxpayer money to be used, actually to be put forward to help these community weeks of action. But they're just my points really, and I'd have looked to the kind of measures of success and outcome measures that we're going to see. But really touch base, because the ICSs have children, have adults, have housing, have everybody sitting around that table. It's a good link.
Thank you. Good points. Just wasn't specifically a question, just some information. So you're quite right about the geographical model. We were set up quite a while ago to be a geographical policing model, and the point of that was so individuals had responsibility in those areas, and part and parcel of our visibility, probably should have mentioned it in my presentation, but we're in the early stages of it around how we get more visibly in those communities, as we're working hand in hand with the local authorities in terms of going to their family hubs and you mentioned it earlier, but bringing back the old ideas we tried before, but they really did work in terms of the community hubs where members of the community could go to and see us, see partnership agencies, etc. So that work is in place, so we can increase our foothold and visibility across the county by working hand in hand geographically in those locations. So yeah, hopefully all that will be to come.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, it's you aligned to the labs now as well, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Anne, that's brilliant. So closing words from the Commission on this one.
So I think that was a really brilliant presentation and really good discussion. Thank you all very much for that. So we have got a commitment from our senior leadership team that where people identify gaps they haven't seen and they aren't in contact with local police officers, please let us know. We will get that sorted out. I just wanted to mention Oundle because I have been to visit Oundle. And I have met the PCSOs and the constable there, and they are just amazing. And I heard about all their work. The interesting thing for me about that meeting was we did invite the chair of the parish council, and that was the first time he had been into that police hub, actually. So there clearly is a bit of work to do to make all those connections. I'd be very happy to take you in, Dorothy, if you can spare the time. And you can meet them for yourself, but they are really, really active. There's 3 of them but they are covering it. They are covering it. They're obviously not going to be seen by every resident, are they? But it would be interesting for you to meet them, I think. So I'd be very, very happy to do that. On the youth, loads of stuff going on with youth at the minute. We've got Young Northants. So there was a conference recently with youth providers and youth champions looking at youth needs across the county. And of course, safety is a big issue for our young people. So they were talking about things like that. We've just had the youth summit in Northampton. The police were there, the police ran a workshop, and the young people were talking to police about their own particular needs there. And one of the intentions, so I was at a Northants youth meeting either yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. And the intention there with youth providers is to work with young people to develop a youth manifesto, which I think will be really useful for all of us, because then it will be incumbent on all the different organisations to look at what they can do in terms of meeting the aspirations within that manifesto. So there is a lot of work going on with youth, but again, it just needs all connecting up, doesn't it? But the other thing I just wanted to say in terms of our ambitions to be really engaged with the community, to have the community on that journey with us, to keep the community safe, you do need to know that in Northamptonshire we have 1.9 police officers per 1,000 head of population. In the Met, they have 4.2. Our Chief Constable, our interim Chief Constable, has worked with his senior leadership team to figure out how many people we would need to keep ourselves safe in Northants, and it's 2.8, 2.9. So we need to be aware of that gap. So it means that today's announcement, the government is releasing £100 million for additional specials, additional PCSOs, additional constables is really, really important for us, because it means we will be able to boost their numbers, hopefully, quite soon. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I did the numbers on that with my simple calculation. It works out £8,600 per person, over 13,000. Sorry, over 100 million and 13,000 officers. So I'm not quite sure how that all hang together, but that's not for us for today, is it? So brilliant, and thank you so much. That was really informative. I think there's 1,000 more questions might be coming at you via email. So thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So we're going to move on to item 7. So we invite the Commissioner to introduce the draft of your new police fire and crime plan.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really, really pleased to introduce this. I hope you agree with me that the designers have done a really good job on making it really accessible, both in the look of it, but also in the way that it reads. So I'm really pleased about that. It's really important to me that this is based on the big conversation that my officers had with people out in all the different communities. And what I'm hoping is that when people read it, they will find a reflection of what they have said to us in terms of what their priorities for keeping our communities safe are. So we've spoken to people out in the communities, but we've also held 3 workshops, one on youth, one on violence against women, and one on the criminal justice system, because these are 3 huge areas for development in the county. And again, we would hope that people who are involved in those workshops will find a reflection of what came out of those workshops in the documentation. So you'll know, because we've already discussed it when you came to Derby House, thank you for doing that, that the plan is based on 3 missions, that it's got 4 tests, and the overarching goal is all about public safety. And we have joined in this documentation the police and the fire, so that people can see what the overarching ambition is. We know that we've got lots of work to do in the county, particularly around culture change in the force and in the fire service, but I think we're well on our way to dealing with that. I think there's unanimity across the piece about how we're going to do that and what we're going to be doing. I was recently at 2 conferences, one for commissioners and one for the criminal justice system. And one of the things that was really pleasing about that for me is is that everybody is facing the same way. So prevention, intervention, keeping young people out of the criminal justice system, problem-solving courts so that we don't have overfull prisons anymore, and finding logical ways of keeping our community safe. And neighbourhood policing is obviously a huge part of that. Another big part of it for me is partnership working. So we have loads and loads of partnerships. We have far too many meetings, in my view. I would like to see a few less, but I would like them to be punchier with greater outcomes. And one of the things that I would like to see develop more is people who've got decision-making powers and budgets at those meetings, not just the people who are going to be told what to do, because I think that will save us all a huge amount of time. And we have got to get used to that kind of collaboration at a higher strategic level, don't we? So one of the things I'm really pleased about is the data sharing that's happening now. It's happening at a much greater level and at a higher level than it's ever happened before. There's still work to be done on that, particularly with the local authorities, I have to say. But that data sharing is proving to be really, really valuable. So there is work to do on partnerships. But I am really pleased that in all the conversations and all the conferences I've been to, Judge Lucking actually had a meeting at the courts recently looking at victim care and witness care, which came out of the local CJ board. And again, everybody was singing the same song. So I'm very, very optimistic that with this plan we've got it right. I'm really clear with everybody that I am not an operational lead. I'm still getting loads of emails with requests as if I am a police constable. I'm not the chief constable, I'm not the fire chief. I'm your representative. I'm not an operational person. And I'm really, really clear about that. And I think it's really, really important that the police force don't feel as if my office is interfering in operational matters. And I don't want the fire service to feel we've got things to say. Doesn't mean we can't say stuff. But, you know, the actual day-to-day operations is their business, not mine. Is that okay? You've seen the draft plan. You've been to Derby House. I hope you enjoyed that. The plan is now out for consultation. You're all influencers, so I'm hoping that you will influence people to respond to the consultation. The consultation around this is also linked to the funding to make it happen, so I hope that sits well with you as well. So the ask about the precept is related to delivery of the plan. And out of this plan, obviously, we'll drop all the operational plans to do with policing, to do with fire, to do with the services provided by my office. Is that okay? Lovely.
Councillor Nurse? Straight in.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner. Just one quick question, really. It mentions there that you've been consulting with the Health and Wellbeing Board. Now, I'm the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board for the North. I wasn't aware of that, and it's not on our agenda for the 12th of December. So, I mean, it may be done individually. And obviously the people on the Health and Wellbeing Board are the sort of partners that you talk to anyway, so it may be through that. I got your point about not too many meetings, and I can quite agree with that. But you also said about setting up a public safety board, so you know, I just hope it's not just another talking shop. You know, that's you know, one of the things I think we do too much of is just sitting and talking. So, you know, overall, you know, I'm very happy with the plan. It's good to see that you're continuing with the things like the joint working with police and fire and the early intervention work, you know, that's been set up previously and is continuing, and that's really good. In fact, there's quite a lot of similarity, you know, with what we've done before. I think it's good that continuity and, you know, keeping things going and not suddenly, you know, changing everything. But you know, obviously it's just the very high level, and the operational level would be what members of the public would be looking at, as how it's, you know, things like, are there enough constables in this area or that area, and there's always a view about that. But you know, I know this is the more strategic level, so you know, it seems to be, you know, going in the right direction.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. The connection, Dr. Chris was absolutely right. The connection between health and good policing and community safety is, of course, really, really important. That's why I'm hoping that the labs work, because, you know, they're driven by public health, aren't they? And all those factors and the way policing impacts on that is really, really important. So thank you for that. I think there are some changes of direction in this plan, because we are reintroducing neighbourhood policing and more visible policing, but that is in response to what is going on nationally and what the public is saying to us. We're really, really clear that we want to have ethical policing. I'm really proud that out of all the troubles we've had in Northamptonshire, our system of vetting has been reinvigorated, and it's informing the Home Office plans for vetting, and it's been mentioned in the Angelini report as something that everybody else should follow. So I'm really pleased about that. But I'm glad you like it, and you're right, it is a high strategic level. In terms of the Public Safety Board, that would be a strategic board. It would be a decision makers board. I think we've got too many meetings where the decision makers are around the table.
Okay, so Councillor Gonzalez to search.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can ask the Commissioner, in terms of the report, which is clear and bright, and I certainly am promoting it and will continue to do so, thank you. And my community will be very pleased to receive the opportunity to engage fully. There is concern about, obviously, operational activity. We know you're not the operational lead, and we absolutely appreciate that those are the numbers that people want to see. How many firefighters are there? How many police officers are there? What are the call-out times and deployment of those resources within the neighbourhoods? And that's absolutely essential. We don't want to worry anybody, but we want to make sure that they're fully aware of the availability of the resource which they pay for. Obviously, and you're asking for, I'm sure, more money as well going forward, which is understandable as long as it's deliverable within the community and making it safer. And I'd always say that, and I always support that, as long as we can see visible safety being encouraged and increased. I take exception to the words safe and safer, and I'm sure you don't need to change it very often, but it is an important role to make sure that we make our communities safer, because they are already safe places to live in, as we know. We've heard from the Assistant Chief Constable a little bit earlier on about the fact that communities, mainly rural ones, are safer places to live in or be in during the day, according to the figures and obviously through policing and responses there. A question I have in terms of your point earlier on about local area partnerships, and you brought it up, Madam Commissioner, in terms of that, which are very important, as we know. Most meetings have been held virtually, but it is really important that police and fire do take part. Certainly in the local one, Northampton South, that hasn't been the case for the last few meetings, and it is important that that is police followed up. I'm not sure about the rest of the county. And yesterday there was the very important summit, which was the Children and Young People's Summit. It's the 9th one across the county, and again there wasn't any police presence there, and that was something that had been requested several times. And in fact, other partners around the table, and I had lead commissioners around the table with me, on my table, NHS, etc. Quite rightly, the names you said about individuals and people's roles that you want to have who are decision-making people would absolutely greatly valued the police presence. I'm not sure why they weren't visible. It wasn't a lack of interest, I'm sure.
Was the office visible, do you know?
They went to the offices.
Were invited?
They were invited, absolutely, yes.
Commissioner's office.
I'm not sure about the three of you at the top of the table, if you like. I'm not aware of that, but I am aware that within the local area partnership, as I am one of the sort of stakeholders involved in that, it was raised yesterday quite openly that police hadn't yet attended. I am absolutely sure that there's good police response when information is requested. But it is important that at those areas where we have summits of that type, or we have regular monthly local area forums from that perspective, in the labs, that there is police presence. It's so crucial, because effectively when we can take out a problem early on, diffuse a situation early on, it doesn't become then a police problem, if you like, but police can interject and add good information there. But thank you for the report, and I remain open to hear the views further on.
Thank you very much for that. You know, I'm really, really involved in youth development work all across the county. I didn't know about that summit. So we need to make sure that me and my team do know. We've got a team of youth workers who do the most amazing early intervention work. They need to know about things like that. We've got a new immediate justice team that's doing extraordinary work with young people. They need to know about that as well. So we'll make sure that that communication gap is filled. Just wanted to say something about rural areas. There are issues in rural areas. Sometimes they're hidden and sometimes they're not. So we have got county lines in rural areas. Now you might not see them, but we know they're there. We have issues in rural areas to do with speeding traffic. There are far too many road traffic accidents in this county. It is heartbreaking. And we need to do something about that, particularly in the rural areas. There are issues in the rural areas around hare coursing. We've got to deal with that. There are issues in the rural areas to do with gang-related crimes, stealing really expensive farm machinery. How do I know about all of that? Because one of the first things I did when I came into role was have a survey with farmers, and that is what they were telling us. And in terms of the road traffic accident, it is a continual issue that's raised with me by the road safety lobbies. So there is a lot of work we do need to do in the rural areas. So we will be setting up a rural crime roundtable soon, so that we can have a more in-depth look at all of that and see what strategies can come out of that. And there are a couple of things about it, isn't it? Whether you feel safe or not is often gendered. So when I had a workshop here a while ago about safety in the community, all the white middle-aged men were saying they felt as safe as houses, and all the young men and most of the black people and most of the women were saying they didn't feel safe. So I think there are gendered and race and age issues around all that, which is why we need to take time out to listen to everybody, because everybody's experience is a bit different. So there's issues around how people feel, which is just as important actually, and about whether people really are safe. And both of those have got issues around communication, hasn't they? Which is why me and Marianne are out and about the community all the time, talking to people. Because we want people to be safe. We also want them to feel safe. Okay.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the crime figures here, but I won't go through them now. Councillor Maxwell.
I've got two questions, or maybe two questions to ask. But on page 43, it states that you have...
Sorry, you're 43. I was thinking, I thought it was only 20 pages long. 7, thank you.
Yeah. On page 43, which is in this book actually.
Page 7.
Page 7.
Page 7.
Page 7.
Oh, wait, yeah, sorry. Okay, it states that we have inexperienced police which are overstretched, under-resourced to meet the demands. Now, if that's the case, what are we doing about it? How can we actually make sure that the police are looked after?
Very good question, thank you for that. It's of great concern to me, I have to say. So there are two things about it. One is, I want to strengthen occupational health, so when people feel the strain, they can be properly responded to and looked after. But we're also minded, and I've just been looking at the plans, Vaughan, I don't know what you're going to say about this, but there are also plans to take some of the pressure off the young responders by giving them some additional resource in terms of investigators. And I've been talking to people nationally about that, and that seems like a really, really good idea. Because at the moment, you know, the problem is they're inexperienced, but they've also got too big a caseload. So we need a bit more experience coming in. So thank you for that question.
And my next question is that on page, I'm going back, 23, it said that you have a shortfall of 53k. Why? Why have we got a shortfall? And then further down, page 25, it states that we are overspent by 106.
Are you on the same plan?
Well, I've got the pages are different. Sorry.
They do tell you at the bottom, so page 40.
Yeah, sorry.
Paulage just pointed out they've got
Yeah,
both
sorry,
numbers.
they are, yeah, just let me get the right page. So it would be page 23, isn't it? Yeah.
Is this the finance details?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's page 23.
So I've got a job for Mr. Ashcroft.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So it says there was a shortfall of 53k to Y, and then on page 25,
21.
which would be yes, all those.
Keep it up, one.
Carry on.
Where?
Right, sorry. So that would be
In our big report. So
yeah,
what page is it on the big report?
oh right.
And then
So,
I'll be able to tell you what page it is in the booklet.
well, it's not. Funny enough, on part of the booklet it says page 59, 23, but then this bit it
23.
doesn't have it. So what? So what's sorry? What's 25? Page 25.
That's the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes of the meeting.
Previous minutes.
No.
Yeah, minutes of the meeting.
Is it? Oh right, sorry. It says that we underspent by 106,000. So
That's what that was from.
how is it that we have a shortfall in the spending at the present moment?
And then it's
If I don't
Should we
know
just
what
take a
page
moment to try and work out exactly what?
Sorry.
I'm not with you. Which?
It's page, so on page 73
Hold on,
actually.
so changes coming across.
Sorry.
Where's the money? Where's the money?
I'm sorry, I've got page, it's 73. Sorry.
You're actually talking,
Yeah.
you're actually talking about a later agenda item.
Yes.
Different page.
Anyway, my question is, why do we have a shortfall in the funding?
We'll deal with that under the budget item.
Next
Right,
question.
okay.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Next.
Okay, so Dr. Cuss.
Say that one.
Save it for the next one. Thank you.
You've been pre-warned.
Thank you. I like the plan and it really, I'll have a good read through it and I've wrote lots of strategies, so I'm quite interested. The one thing I asked last time, and I don't know where you got with this thinking, is there some kind of a plan on a page? So I think if you could get something out that said these are the key priorities, this is the we will statements, and then the actions, get it all on one page.
Yeah,
That'd be really great to get.
So we'll certainly do that. We're saving the fingers of our typesetters by getting the plan finalised before we produce what's fundamentally a sort of visual product. But yeah, absolutely in our sites as a useful guide for the public, and it's the kind of thing you can have on one slide for every event.
Correct.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Johnny. Typesetters, you don't hear that in a conversation. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question, I mean, I love it actually, and they've captured, you know, I've listened to you speaking for years, Commissioner, and it's as if you've written the whole document. They've captured your thoughts and feelings very well. You know, hearing you in council meetings, it's always about people feeling unsafe, and I hear it all the time actually as well, and it is generally from women and girls and younger men, as you say. My question though is on page 23, but it's We've heard previously of the fire service saying that they haven't got enough to operate safely, and I wondered now going forward whether they will. That was all really. Thank you.
The fire service is currently undertaking an emergency cover review. I'm very excited about it because I think we've got a number of issues in the fire service. One is we need more full-timers, and another one is we need more retained staff, and it's getting really difficult to get retained staff because whereas once upon a time people worked locally, now they don't. So you can't work in London and be a retained member of staff firefighter in Northamptonshire, can you? So we are looking at all of that, and I think using a problem-solving approach, there will be answers to some of that. So we know, and I've said it often, that with critical incidents we need crews of 5. We don't need them for lower level incidences. I don't want people running out in a big pump to cut off somebody's ring or rescue a cat or to do things like that. But we've seen over the recent flooding incidences the absolute value of having fully crewed pumps and having specialist teams going out. Really, really important. So I feel really passionately that we need to really look after our firefighters. We don't see them very much because they have already kept us safe to a very large degree, haven't they? But yeah, so that's going to be a really interesting piece of work, actually.
Can I just draw people's eye to page 12 of the report under the fire and rescue column, which references Your Future Service, which is the brand for that emergency cover review that the Commission talked about. So it's right within the heart of the plan for us.
Just a couple of things, Commissioner. I think it's a great plan. I think it's very aspirational. The challenge is clearly going to turning these words into action and something that makes a difference to the community. My big plea is just hold your nerve, because these things take time. It's not going to happen overnight. Everybody's going to expect it to happen overnight. And it is a bit of a... I think we were somewhere near this in the 1990s when we had Casper, which if you looked at where Casper was, Casper would probably be the same 6 dots that you've now identified. We never held our nerve in those days. We changed the whole way we did things, and now we're going back to what I think is the right way of doing it. So my plea is hold your nerve, and please, please, you've got to give the top cover to the chiefs, for people like HMI, when they're coming in and they're looking at the minutiae of stuff that actually is important to HMI, but it's not important to our local communities. So my plea to you is, please provide that top cover and hold your nerve on delivering this plan.
I'd like to respond to that just very quickly, Chair. I'm totally and absolutely with you. One of the things that I'm proud of that I've already achieved, actually, is insisting to the inspectorate that they contextualise the inspections, because I don't think it's fair them coming in and making judgments in a vacuum. They need to know what the issues are. They need to know how many people we've got in each force in service. They need to know what our challenges are. And when I first asked them about that, they poo-pooed me, but now they've agreed to do it for both the police force and the fire service. So I'm really pleased about that, and that links in with what you were saying.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've sorted that over well, and I'm sure you've relaxed slightly, Commissioner. But, John,
Can I just say that there is a pile of rather nice flowers at the back of the room. If you want to grab those and put them on your counter, throw them on the table in community meetings, whatever you can, to encourage people to respond to consultation on the plan and the precepts on the back table.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to...
Sorry, through you, Chair. So, just as the Commissioner has a statutory function to produce a police fire and crime plan, the panel has a statutory function to review it, which you've done, and to make a report or recommendations on it. Now, the report can essentially be a narrative of comments made at the panel meeting. The question is whether there is any specific recommendation that the panel as a whole wants to make. Now, what seems to be emerging from the discussion is very positive. You know, the panel recognises that this is a significant that this is a strategic document, and clearly the judgment of its performance will involve a lot of operational matters. But in terms of it's not necessarily a recommendation, because this is the plan that the Commissioner wants to bring forward, so she will do it anyway. But in terms of a conclusion, the panel seems to be supportive of endorsing the draft police fire and crime plan.
Can I just, I'm sorry, I know I keep going on this, but can we sort of think about the plan on a page? I know you're going to go through it, but actually be clear, because for me, the public are really going to be key in this and understanding this and how we word this and get this out and get people engaged with it. Thank you.
So that very definitely would be a recommendation.
It's part of a process. So at the beginning of the consultation internally, we did have a plan on a page.
Perfect.
So we've already consulted on that really heavily with fire and police and with our own staff, and we will continue to do that as well. But we really want to be in a position to reflect back to the public that what they say is in the plan.
Sorry to you, Chair, just to indicate that obviously I'm fully supportive of it going out for consultation. I think that's what we need to be doing as well.
Chair, can I just...
Councillor Burton?
Yeah, I'm trying to work out why we were confused about these page numbers. I know we've got the small one and the large one, but the numbers of your document do not match ours, and I found out why, because your page 4 and 5 is missing and it's just a little slip in. So that's why we were trying to work out. I was trying to work out.
It's a design feature.
Our page 5 and 6.
Yeah,
So it won't just show up on your numbered pages.
Yeah.
Got it, makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a design feature. I think a little bit flash.
Takes me back to my former life when I was a commercial director of a printing company. So there you go. So thank you for that. So we have some recommendations, observations there. So thank you for that. So we'll move on to item 8, the Fire and Rescue Authority Finance Update. So over to the Commissioner.
Well, this provides the panel with a high-level forecast financial outturn for the current year. It provides members with information relating to the services reserves, capital programme and financial outlook. So work is well underway to do next year's budget, and Vaughan and I will have to take any questions. I'm sure you've read it all. Dorothy, you had a question on this.
I think I've got one chair in this meeting.
Sorry.
Oh, it was on the police one, not the fire one. This is the fire one, beg your pardon.
When they're finished, then.
Can I just say, before you begin, because I'm in contact with everybody on a national level, our budgets for fire and our budgets for police are comparing really, really well in terms of diligence and prudence at being able to meet our budgetary needs compared to lots of other forces and services.
Yeah, my question is more about, I suppose, linking into next year's plan. So you talk in your Safe and Sound plan about the opportunity to make savings through great cooperation between fire and police. You've got your budget headlines in Appendix A of this report. Are you setting yourself an aspirational target about what that saving might be through greater cooperation? Because there's clearly, looking at those headings, a lot of joint headings there with the police. Are you setting yourself a target of what you think you could save by better cooperation between services?
We're not setting a tangible target, no. What we don't want to do is to try and predict something that we don't know what the outcome is yet. So at the minute, the budgets are being prepared on the basis of the zero-based basis is how we calculate all the budgets, but we're not assuming things that haven't been agreed yet. So what we would do is, if business cases are brought forward to join more things together or to get those kind of efficiencies, we do it by business case and then via budgets out during the year.
It is also a way we were expecting people to work. So if they come to us with a demand for, I don't know, more HR, we want to know that that HR is going to be servicing both the force and the service and have efficiency and effectiveness built into it, if you see what I mean. So it's also a requirement in terms of how people are expected to work. You Sorry.
Yeah, I suppose I'm a bit, because in the plan it clearly talks about the opportunities to make savings through that collaboration, and I was wondering if you, in your head, have you got some ideas of what they are, and you would be expecting people to come forward with business plans that meet.
A simple example is going to be the workshops that both police and fire will be using. That's a really easy, good example, isn't it? That instead of having two suppliers out there, we're bringing it in-house and it'll be a joint operation.
I suppose the reason for asking the question is, having lived this about 10 years ago, it's easy for people to say yes, we'll do it, but then they never do. So at some stage, they're going to need to be a bit of push to make it happen, and that's what I'd like, I suppose, to encourage you to do, is to make that push.
So I suppose what's worth pointing out is all of the savings and efficiencies achieved so far that we have managed to push through over the last 3 years. Since the governance of fire came over to the Commissioner's office, there's a lot of back office functions that have been joined up, and we've been able to take those savings out. So there'll be a point at which it becomes more difficult to do that, because we've kind of got all the low-hanging fruit, and we've got the easier stuff sorted. There's other projects underway, so the capital programme, as Danielle says, includes the joint fleet workshop, which is going to be a great opportunity, firstly, to make sure all of our staff are safe and operating to the best possible standards within those workshops, but also to bring police and fire together so that we've got resilience, we've got more efficient ways of working, we've got better economies of scale, and also that it enables us to do more stuff with the state that's kind of left over from that. So there's going to be more projects like that, but they will be ticked off one by one.
Can I give another sort of example? It's not always going to be about working cheaper, but potentially working smarter, so that your future service initiative that we talked about might not be about having fewer firefighters, it might be about redeploying the savings into the right methods and structures of working for the fire and rescue service. So it's not a cost-cutting measure, it's about making great use of every penny the public give us, really.
And a live example that's just come to me, this morning I had a meeting with our internal auditors, which we've recently re-tendered, and they work across police and fire. It's a very small thing, but we're changing one of the audits that's being done in the next 12 months, so it's a joint police and fire audit rather than doing it separately. So we only pay for 10 hours worth of work rather than 20 hours worth of work. So it's a little bit like that.
I think every penny counts. Councillor Maxwell.
Right. So my question is, on page 73 of this report, why is there a shortfall of 53k?
We're not on
We're not
This is
there
fire.
yet.
That's right there.
That's the next report.
That's the next report.
That's the blue one.
Oh, that's the blue one.
On the red one.
Right, okay. Sorry?
Yeah.
Right. So then, given the fact that with this, you gave a pay increase of 4.75, was that to both police and fire?
For the staff.
Yeah. For the staff, the same for both staff, yeah.
Yeah. So, how many staff vacancies do you have at the present moment?
In fire,
Yeah, and in police?
I don't have any.
we don't. So I'm not sure I can answer that question because it is a moving target. It's not something that I know. Certainly in the office of the Police Fire and Crime Commissioner, there aren't any vacancies currently, other than ones in the areas of voice and early intervention, which I mentioned in the next report.
But
in the fire side, there will be a handful of vacancies, but there aren't a huge number of staff in the fire service now. There's only kind of
non-operational staff.
I mean, non-operational
yes,
staff.
but operational people who actually are fire people or police people, how many vacancies
Well,
do
within
you have?
there's very few vacancies in the operational world, particularly as in whole-time firefighters. We're over-established at the moment, hence the overspend detailed in the report for the reasons within there. So there's not currently any concerns on the fire side, particularly, of excess vacancies.
And the police?
In police, we are still over-established. We've not been able to recruit as fiercely as we would have liked, but we're still over the numbers that we'd aimed for.
For the next phase.
Yeah, so we've already kind of ready to put plans in place depending on what comes out of the government in terms of what we get out of that 13,000.
And do the government then finance that, or you're expecting taxpayers to finance that? Not taxpayers.
It'll be a combination. So we've got in place. The budgets won't be announced until the middle of December, so in 2 weeks' time, and then we'll know. But the current plan is based on a level of uplift funding from government for extra officers. We're talking police here, and then we'd expect something to come from government in relation to the announcements this morning about the extra 13,000, 3,000, 1,200, whatever you read. So we await in anticipation
So
about
you haven't got that information anyway?
No, we don't. No, we don't.
And you won't know until when?
We won't know until the week before Christmas.
Week before Christmas. Is that when we'll find out ourselves?
It should be in the press, yeah. And then it'll come to the along with the preset papers beginning of February for this meeting.
Right. And based on that, would you then expect to recruit more if it's down? Do you think you can recruit more because you've got more of a budget?
Yeah, we recruit constantly. We have pools of applicants to draw from to make sure that intakes, and there's a limit how many officers you can train at one point in time, but we constantly review how recruitment is going to make sure that we've flexed if we need to.
Because one of the things I read in the report was that PCSOs don't like staying as PCSOs. They like something, police officers.
I think we've covered this, that particular thing many times. It's such an aspiration there, isn't it? But thank you for that. So we will be opening that, well, the Commission will be opening the advent calendar that morning to see what rolls out money. That would be interesting. Andre Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've noticed that there is obviously a very small overspend of £4,000 on the report. Chairman, can I ask the question to the Commissioner here, how is she proposing to reduce the issue about fire in the community and safety in the community? Because quite clearly fire and rescue is more rescue than fire, as we know, but how will you reduce the response times going forward? I appreciate this is an update on the finances, but quite clearly to build that into your plans going forward. And
response times are a real... sorry.
So I was just going to say, in terms of your control room scenarios here, I think there's a line here about underspend as a result of vacancies in the control room. How is that being turned around? Can you give us reassurance that the control room now is fully staffed? Thank you.
It depends what's happening, you know. They were doubly staffed during the floods, and they are generally staffed, not as much as I would like, but according to what practices currently they are. What was I going to respond to? Oh, the response time. One of the issues I've picked up is the data we're being given on response times includes both rural and urban areas. It includes non-critical incidents and critical incidences. So I've asked people to break that down a bit for us, because response times to critical incidents in urban areas is very, very fast. But you can't tell that from the way that the figures are presented, because they're averaged out. So I am interested in those figures, but they're much better than they appear to be.
Can I ask a follow-up question there? A point you raised earlier on, Commissioner, in terms of whole-time and retained staff, and quite clearly you have a lot of members of the public who don't necessarily live in some of our urban areas, but come into the urban areas for work, and vice versa. Have you considered reaching out to those individuals to become retained staff, or in fact indeed full-time?
We have sent out a letter to the local authorities, to the health authorities, to the university and to big employers, encouraging them to release their staff to be retained firefighters. I think we've only had one positive response back. I think that was from Northamptonshire.
Thank you. Pauline.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner?
Can you turn your microphone on?
On page 65, going back to, I think, about the underspend that you've got of vacancies in the control room. In terms of the 2024-25 budget, is that underspent being used? And if so, how much is that underspent? And will those vacancies be filled? How many are they? How much is
I don't
underspent?
have all of the answers to those questions, but just so on page 69 and the breakdown appendix,
Yeah.
the third line down where it says fire control room, that underspend of 193 is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So that's how much is going towards the overall. That's offsetting the overspend position. So
Right.
that's part of the 4,000 overspend we're predicting.
Okay.
There are only, I think, 16 or so posts in the control room. So obviously it's quite a smaller team of people than the police control room. So when people aren't there, it makes more of a difference to a smaller budget percentage-wise. So recruitment is underway. I don't know the answer to the question about when they will be arriving, but obviously we all know that there are vacancies and the team are working to recruit.
So there is plan to recruit for those.
Yeah,
posts.
there's no plan to hold vacancies in that area.
Okay, and you're currently using that underspend anyway?
Yes, it's all kind of netting off throughout in the report.
Okay, so how have you planned in terms of building those to the next year's budget?
So in next year's budget, we're assuming they'll become fully staffed.
Okay.
We do always budget for a vacancy factor because there's always turnover in every department, so we'd be significantly over budgeting if we budgeted every post to be filled 100% of the time, but we are assuming they'll be all filled for next year.
I get that. I just wanted to understand what the plans are moving forward. If you're using that underspend now and you're looking to fill the vacancy.
Yeah.
Right, so that's one. Two is that the additional reports that we had around the PFCC accountable board minutes for October 2024 for the fire rescue service, there was a request for dry suits, and I just want to understand where we are in terms of supplying the fire service with that type of equipment, in terms of cost, how much is that going to cost, when is that going to be delivered to them, that kind of thing, because I know that in the report at the time they didn't have that information to hand, if I understood it correctly. So, and how is that going to be financed?
I don't know if I know the answer to this, but I'll try.
It's page 65. No, I'm telling you the wrong page of the report. That was the additional papers, like I said, it's from the October meeting.
So within the capital programme for the fire service, we have dry suits factored in to this year's budget of £24,000.
Okay.
So it's not been spent yet, but there will be under procurement because it should be spent this financial year.
Right. So do you have any idea what, in terms of your order, your purchase order, how much is that going to cost?
The £24,000 is based on our latest estimate.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Whether or not that's, there's always that variance, but that's what we're expecting at the moment. So that's what we're planning to go out to procure.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer
In
your question?
future, can we have some updates?
You check it for me.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's just clear going to be a focus more, but obviously with this a couple of weekends ago with flooding and things, just thinking about the speed that things have changed now, and we've had sort of floods in places we hadn't previously seen floods. So I guess that's going to have to be a consideration in some sort of contingency or whatever.
Railway stations. Completely flooded, wasn't it?
So interesting. But thank you to the fire service for my village. We couldn't have been without them a couple of weekends ago. So any other questions on that item?
Nobody else wants to.
Oh, sorry.
It's about the fire service again. It said that there's an increase in fires in the In the report there was, I'm talking about the October report as well, right, where it was said that fires have increased in Northampton in terms of other buildings, and I want to understand how you're supporting that piece of work moving forward.
I'm not the fire chief.
I know
I'm
you're
afraid.
not,
That would
but
be a question for the fire chief.
right, but
I'll take it to her. I'll take it to her.
I guess it could be how's the commissioner supporting the chief for policy?
Yes.
Well, we support the chief. I meet her very regularly for updates. We have the accountability board, and we're just setting up a problem-solving board actually. So when we have issues, we have a joint approach to how those things get solved. We do have an extraordinarily good protection service, and they did report to this panel at the last meeting. So that should give you some indication of how we deal with potential building hazards.
I do have an indication, Commissioner, but at the same time, I know you're not operational, okay, but there are some questions that are still, I think you can answer at these meetings a bit more clearer rather than saying you're not operational, because your job is to support the chief fire officer and the chief constable. So for me to understand like why are fires increasing and how you're supporting them to kind of deal with that, whether it's from a financial point of view, the plans you've got in place, your thought process around supporting them, that would be helpful for me to know, and the meeting.
We have reported on the capital spend, so we make sure that the fire service is properly equipped and properly staffed. That is obviously part of it. For me, and I've already said today, you know, that I've looked into response times, and I am satisfied that response times for critical incidents and incidences in urban areas, which is mainly where these events are, is much faster than the figures presented to us show, because they are averaged out. I'm not quite sure what more I can say. So equipment, staffing and response times. The way I support the chief is I have regular meetings with her, and we have an accountability board, and we are setting up a problem-solving board. So those are the ways in which we support her.
Okay. I had another question around the fatalities, like road fatalities and murders going up in Northampton, but I'm not going to, based on what you just said, I'm just going to pass that there. Thank you.
Those are really important issues, and I'm happy to have a focus on them at a meeting, but this focus today is on finance.
It is on finance, and you do need money to deal with these things, to support the chief to deal with those things. So that's why I'm asking.
I suppose as part of the budget setting process for next year, the chief constable and the chief fire officer have been invited to provide bids for investment to the commissioner to support what operational kind of stuff they need support with. So that is, again, that will come to the accountability board for consideration. So if there are any additional budgets required to support and to improve on any of the kind of performance-related stuff, that's how they would feed in, as well as the things that Danielle's described, if that helps.
But also with road fatalities, it is of great concern to me. I mean, it's unacceptable. We've just set up, what's it called? A Safer Roads Alliance.
Yes,
and that board, you know, that was my office who set that up, and that is to directly influence what is going on our streets.
And in fact, Adam, who you met today, is going to be the chair of that board, which is good to bring that kind of county level focus to road safety and really raise it up the agenda.
And of course it's a partnership.
Multi-agency affair.
Yeah.
Very much a multi-agency business, but all agencies agreed that having county level focus as the chairing to pull us all together was the trick. It was a really positive first board.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that probably the most dangerous thing anyone ever does is get in a motor car. So,
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Well, just talking about the firefighters, I don't know whether you're aware, but roughly about 500 houses, I think, in Corby actually, were flooded out during the floods, and a lot of those houses are not insured, which presents a problem for the council, because then they have to work out who pays for the damage. You know, is it the fact that the council have to pay? Well, clearly we can't pay because, you know, if it's somebody who's living in social housing, it's a different issue. But if they're not in social housing, private accommodation or rented accommodation, and they've got no insurance, then that creates a massive problem. So what aspects of the fire, realising, I mean, I'm not sure how quick they got there, but realising that these people were in had serious problems of actually addressing how they get rid of this water. So, but given the fact that we do have a river running through our area, and at the moment it's even flooded all the fields again, what exactly are the fire service? I know you can't comment on it, but what can the fire service actually do to predict helping the council and the residents in sorting out their flooding?
I think on that, Commissioner, so this is prevention, but I think prevention, and what's become very clear over this past, but if you let me finish, is it's clearly identified in all our communities that we have to take a degree of reaction or prevention with flooding. The fire service, I mean, it was inundated over that weekend, and we've got lowland rescue. Is that the right term for it?
Yeah, lowland rescue.
So I think that this is probably a broader discussion actually what we all as councils need to have with our parishes and things, because it's being prepared. I think the fire service has a part to play, but I think we've had in West Northamptonshire, buildings been evacuated 4 times this year. So that's it. Clearly we need to think not only with regard to prevention related through to the fire and rescue, but on a much broader perspective. So I think that's probably not a question for the Commissioner this afternoon, but certainly I think something that we want to sit down with the Commissioner along with a number of other stakeholders in what we do moving forward. But I think it's not. This is a finance report.
Yeah, but it does.
So something to follow.
It does actually. Sorry, it does touch on finance in some ways, because if if you have to give out more money to the fire service in order to alleviate this, and then the residents come to us from councillors or to actually think that we can cough up and resolve the situation. So it's twofold really. What are the fire service going to do in future to make sure that residents realise that they're in a flood area? And how is it that we can't fund it? So what exactly is going to happen in the future?
Well, I think it's a much broader discussion, and as I say, I think communities, we've all got to become more resilient ourselves. Conversations certainly taking place in my community is about actually having sand and bags, for example, available, because if you prevent the water from going into the property in the first place, and you know, if you've got feet on the ground, that is residents, and they assist those people who are less able. But I think it's a conversation I think that we can have with the Commissioner outside of this, because I think we all got into what we do because we care for our communities. For another day. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just add to that, because quite clearly, and I appreciate I'm not taking the thunder away from the Commissioner, but we have a multi-agency approach to this obviously every single time, and in fact this weekend there's a huge amount of rain forecast where our highways teams are going out and ensuring everything they can possibly do is being done. I had a briefing meeting this morning about it. It's also coming to scrutiny on West Northampton, I'm sure. North Northampton will likely do the same thing, I'm sure, in the new year to understand how and where resources can be best placed. But it's obviously a multi-agency approach. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've discussed that quite well. We've gone to agenda item 9, so the policing finance update.
Okay, so like with the report that we've just had a look at, this is the high-level forecast financial outturn for the current year for the force and for the PFCC, so my office. You'll know that working away to finalise finalised the budget for next year, with funding announcements expected in mid-December. And I would like to remind members that on the 27th of January, we will be holding a budget briefing session, which it would be really valuable if all of you could attend. Okay, so I'll turn...
What date is that, sorry?
What date?
27th of January. If that's okay. So I'll leave it to Vaughan to answer any questions you may have on the report.
Have you got a time for that briefing session?
The first question.
I think George is going to tell me when that's booked in for.
Yes. 10 to 12 a.m. Sorry, 10 a.m. to 12 on Teams.
On Teams.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Councillor Maxwell?
Is this when?
Sorry, Mercer, sorry.
I wasn't, she was looking at me and saying, oh, hang on. Yeah, thank you. Commissioner, the early intervention team is really important, and I know you're really passionate about that. I think since it was set up, before your time and now, every report we've had says that you have difficulty recruiting. So those were always an underspend. Now, that difficulty recruiting bothers me because obviously, you know, we're not able to do as much as we would otherwise do with the extra staff that we would like to have. I don't know whether you've actually looked into whether you could perhaps commission any of these services, because there are quite a few voluntary agencies out in the field that do this type of work, and whether you can work with them or contract them to do certain aspects of it. So that was a first question. I've got another one as well, but perhaps you'd like to...
If I just answer that, so workforce development is a really serious issue. So my office had a meeting with all the youth providers a little while ago now to look at what workforce needs are. We had a complete collapse in youth work because of the demise of the youth services in the county in 2007. It's meant that we haven't maintained a skilled workforce. It's a huge issue. Out of that meeting has come 3 different strands of development work, one for an apprenticeship, one for a degree, and one for modular training courses. So I'm really, really pleased with the outcome of that meeting. So we are working with partners to build up that workforce, and that will be those will be the people we'll be looking to bring into the team, whether they want to come in as apprentices or they want to come in to do the modular training. That's what we'll be looking at, so that we've got a skilled team.
Can I add to that, just in a sort of head of paid staff capacity? I recently reviewed with the larger of our teams, particularly the voice team and the youth and early interventions team, whether the levels of vacancy were acceptable and what was getting in the way. We're doing a lot on recruitment and vetting, because I think the vetting timetable and turnaround is a real challenge for us and for policing. So we're looking at whether we can put more heft into the vetting team in order to speed that up and solve problems both sides. But Jackie Jones, who heads the youth team for me, told me that she felt comfortable with the level that they were at currently and didn't want sort of special measures at this time. So she was reassured that we were on the mend. On the voice side, I have made, and Vaughan and I have made a couple of interventions to shore up their numbers and make sure that pipeline is really coming through, because it's the recruitment entry point for our team, and as such, most everyone joining it needs vetting, and they don't stay there forever because they're starting careers and getting on their way. So it's very much in my sights to keep the staffing levels up where they need to be. Thanks.
Yeah. So my second question is again on recruitment, and it's been touched on earlier on, PCSOs, and again we've had this time again difficulty recruiting, and the concern I have is not from the financial point of view, but for the neighbourhood policing, which obviously they are essential to carry out as much neighbourhood policing as you would like, and I just wondered, you know, what can be done about it really, you know, going out to different avenues to try and find people to recruit into this, you know, highly well, really useful members of staff that are boots on the ground, really.
Thank you. Well, you'll be aware that both I and the Deputy Commissioner are really, really keen that at every level of our force and every level of the fire service, we have people who look like the communities that they serve. So we're particularly interested in recruitment with PCSOs, actually. One of the things that Marianne will be doing is holding meetings with all the black churches to try and encourage people in those communities to come forward as PCSOs. I'll be doing the same with the mosques. And that's, you know, we're saying, I think we need to be looking at different demographics for entry into PCSOs. They don't have to be young, they don't have to be white, they don't have to be male. They can come from lots of diverse groups and communities. So I think that's what we'll be looking at. I think, you know, it could be very exciting, actually.
I think perhaps also, certainly from my or the Wellingborough area, the Eastern European population as well is a huge population in our area. So.
We are being quite successful in attracting Eastern Europeans to the police force and to the fire service, actually. It's other demographics we're not being quite so good at.
Well, I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but I'd just like to know.
Never stopped me before, Dorothy. Just keep going.
Right, okay. We sold...
£3,000.
Sorry?
Where is it?
Give us a
Page
minute.
67.
Where's the cash hidden? Come on, Vaughan.
Well, it was on page 3 actually.
Paul,
Yes.
could you put Dorothy out of her misery, please?
Oh, anyway, I don't want to discuss that. I want to know... I will discuss it, but not at the moment. I want to know, you've sold Kettering Police Station, that's correct. So the money from that, has that actually gone back into the budget? That's my first question.
Capital budget.
The capital budget, yeah.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Right.
So that's taking from the sale of the building and making sure that we reuse the revenue costs to continue to
So
drive everything else down.
how much did we make from that?
Oh, very good question. I'm not sure I have the answer.
It was
to
shared,
that.
wasn't it?
It was shared because we sold it because the building was partly owned by the council, wasn't it? I'm feeling our share was around 850,000, but that is off the top of my head. So
And that was gone back into...
I think it was sold for 2 million.
Yeah. It was also sold.
Oh, we got the same.
I think we got this was it 40% or 25%.
And has Corby been sold now?
Corby has been sold, yes.
And how much do we make from that?
Testing me. I think that was around £1 million.
Come on, Vaughan.
It was a decent amount. It might be 900.
So this all helps towards the budget, doesn't it really? And
it's all factored into the capital plan and how we fund
and
it.
that will then help the residents in thinking that might be paying
Well,
less.
it will go into capital.
Go-
Bricks and mortar, no legs.
Right, okay. But going back to the underspend, what proportion, you can't tell us probably at the moment, but what proportion does the government actually give us? Do they give it to what we've actually raised or what they're hoping we're going to raise?
You've been given the figures in
So,
May.
yeah, this is good. So,
Page number.
so please, so this graph,
Don't forget your half pages.
no, it's not the graph.
No, it's on the last.
So it described it here,
It's on page 73.
so on page,
73?
no,
It's on
so
our
page
page
22 of this.
Right, okay, fine.
Yeah. So this tells you that in 24-25 we had a budget of £183 million and 44% of that comes from the precept.
Right.
So 56% is the amount that comes from grants from the Home Office, of which we have little to no control.
Right.
Not enough money.
They decide what they're going to give us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it. Whether we like it or not.
Like it or lump it.
There is a consultation, but I've never known it to
That's not a cons, that's a telling. It's not a conversation.
And do we find we have enough then in that case? Never.
No, we never have enough, and that's why we have to preserve the plans in place to have find efficiencies, and we have to ask more from the precept.
And that's the next issue, precept.
Send Dorothy down there.
Sorry?
Send you down there, Home Office.
That was going to be my suggestion.
One chair.
Sorry?
What, we're going to send you to London, I think.
Well, that'd be quite good actually. Thank you.
Did you want me to answer your original question? No, are you all right with that?
Suspense.
Okay.
Well, I think that you sort of explained it now actually. Why? Thank you.
Well done.
So, Andre, you have a question?
Thank you. No, it's been answered. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Moser?
Going back to that, obviously, you mentioned about the numbers that we have compared to the Met, and obviously this has been a big issue for a long while of fairer funding, and we've been promised it coming for quite some years. And is there any movement on getting equalisation or a better proportion for us compared to other authorities, where or other police forces and fire services as well, of course, because we are underfunded compared to a lot of other areas. So is there work going on to try and push for extra funding for our area?
My understanding is that there has been a review, but it's on a shelf somewhere, and it isn't being taken down, and it's not being implemented this year.
Or next.
Or next.
So, Councillor Maxwell, you need to pop down and get it off the
Yeah,
shelf.
sort them out.
Sorry?
Sort them out.
Well, pop down and get it off that shelf.
Go on, you can do
Well,
it.
I do think we've had some disappointments lately. I mean, in so much that we've lost certain funding.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. We've lost certain funding, and I think that this idea about funding the police and fire from the government is, I hope, isn't going to be in the same as what's happened in the last couple of weeks. I think that we are struggling. There's no two ways about it, and it's easy for the government to just suddenly take it away and think we can manage, but we can't manage. We're struggling just to make ends meet as it is at the moment with all the things we need to do.
Well, I think with what we get, I think we do jolly well with it. It would be nice to have some more to make it a bit easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, any more questions on the item?
Great.
So that use that one. So moving on to item 10, police fire and crime panel work programme. So James.
Thank you, Chair. So, in part, this is the standard work programme item. It's obviously reported to each panel meeting. The panel gets to look at what's in it, review it, add, change, amend. But the standard item, I think, with a bit of a challenge back to the panel to be particularly robust about what it does and how it's doing it, with a view to ensuring the work programme's as focused, as prioritised as it needs to be to get the best outcomes from your collective efforts. So the section 5 of the report contextualises, restates what the Commission is responsible for, what the panel is responsible for. I think the extra emphasis, this bit extra challenge thrown back to the panel at this meeting, I think really reflects various factors that seem to be relevant. So we're midway through 24-25, which was a year that started with a new commissioner, new members joining the panel, and during the months since, you've hopefully been able to develop the working relationships amongst the panel, between the panel and the commissioner. Then it's a period of continuing change, whether that's at local level or national level. So there was the government announcement earlier today, and earlier at this meeting you've had the opportunity to see the Commissioner's new strategic plan for policing, fire and crime, and there might possibly be areas emerging from that the panel wants to pick up on as it goes forward. And then it's never not the case it's never not important for the panel to ensure that its work programme is focused and prioritised on the areas where it can make most difference. As I say, so the work programme as it stands is at the appendix. That includes some things put in that already have particular times allocated to them. It includes some areas that the panel's identified before, but it hasn't yet slotted in at a particular time. And then really sets out some questions for the panel to consider at paragraph 6.4, so page 82, about the work that the panel does and how it goes about doing that work, and hopefully linked in to what national guidance about best practice says on work programming, which is as set out at paragraph 6.5, page 83. So, in a sense, it's the task that the panel has at each of its regular meetings. What's in the work programme, what should be in, are you still happy with that? What topics do you want to look at? What's the best way of looking at them? But with some extra emphasis at this meeting, reflecting where we are in the year, some extra challenge back to the panel about focus, prioritisation, how it uses the resources available to it to best effect.
Thank you, Jodie. I think today's announcement, I think it delves into the detail there, I'm sure, isn't it? So I think that'll be something we might want to pick up on. So, Andrew.
Yeah, I think having listened to the Commissioner about the plan, having listened to the neighbourhood policing debate, having heard what Councillor Mercer said about what's been in the press today, it's all right giving us a shed load of money, but with that money we've actually got to recruit and retain the people. Right. Yeah. And it's a theme that's come through the whole meeting. So for me, one of the most important things we need to focus on, and how we support the Commissioner, is I don't know, but recruitment and retention, because we're not going to deliver any of this if we can't recruit the right calibre people and keep hold of them. Whether that's PCSOs, whether it's specials, whether it's volunteers. So for me, there's a big theme throughout this about retention and recruitment and retention, and I'm not sure how we contribute to helping with that, but that for me is the theme that's come out of today's meeting, because the plan won't be delivered if we haven't got enough people to deliver it. We've got £254,000 that we can't seem to get the people or keep hold of them, and we need to somehow, what that looks like, I don't really know. But
yeah, I mean, that was something, earlier, that was the word of the day, I think, is recruitment, isn't it? It's evidently that's not uncommon, as we know, across all departments in our councils, for example. So it's coming up with a plan. But Johnny,
just to come back on that, one of the big things that we're pushing with the people within the office and within the police service is essentially that we need all the taps open. We don't want to be just doing graduate recruitment or just doing community recruitment. We want to be open for business for smart, mature, skilled, representative people from across the county, and that means looking at graduates, looking at apprentices, getting out into communities to recruit where they are. Innovative schemes like Police Now, the Commissioner's been discussing with them how they can play a role in that really wide offer. So it's exactly the right territory.
Yeah, I think that you've got people maybe stepped away from work earlier, and it's how to make it attractive to people to come back to that, because as we all know, working in our communities is unbelievably rewarding. So it's the reward you get is way beyond the pounds, I think, isn't it? Which is huge. Councillor Maxwell.
Well, I'd like to say that if you're looking at recruitment and also sustainability of keeping these people, but I think one of the issues is that it's what they're facing every day. The police are facing various aspects of being abused. We know that from the people locally that some police have been abused. And I think equally the other issue is that the employers at the moment are unable to take on new employment because of the budget. And I think that and some are reluctant to release them, even if it's just for half a day, to do something for the community. And I think that's an issue that has to be taken on board. You're not going to be, on one minute, the PSOs, they do get paid, but volunteers don't get paid. And it's the volunteers who want to have a look and see what's going on, but they're not being paid, and equally, there should be some sort of mechanism whereby they get travel, they get paid for travel to go to various places. And I think that it's a bigger picture. You may not agree, Albert.
No, I think volunteers do a wonderful job in lots of areas of our public safety system, but we could do more to look at incentives to help people to volunteer, and where we've got some leverage. I know some places look at tax, for instance, as an offset for special constables. There's ideas out there.
So I think we've identified, James, a few areas you want to.
Should I add something to that?
Please, Paul.
Thank you. I don't know if it's any good, but I'm going to put it out. I don't know if this suggestion is going to be any good, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. At this point, when we're discussing the panel's workload, I think it would be good if, for example, the Commissioner has got an area of work that she's struggling with, that we kind of probably take 10 minutes or so to have a debate about it, to see if we can bring some real solutions to the table, rather than reading about it after the event.
Yep.
So I think that's probably a good way forward in terms of helping and supporting your work in the areas that you're struggling with. I mean, I don't know what everybody thinks, but I think that could be useful.
Problem shared.
Thank you. What do you think, Commissioner?
I think, partnership working and problem-solving approaches are really key to everything we're doing. So if you wanted to have a light shone on all of that and a discussion around that, that would be very welcome.
I'm just saying, like a tiny piece of work, like a one problem kind of brought to the table, yep. 10 minutes.
Okay, so one of the issues, Pauline, is we need to recruit more black people for the police force.
Right.
And for the fire service.
Okay.
So we don't have any issues recruiting Eastern Europeans, which is very interesting for me.
Right.
But we clearly have issues in the black communities. So, that will be a focus for me and the Deputy Commissioner in the new year.
Okay, and you've already come up with some solutions in terms of how you're going to approach that. So what I'm saying is, maybe at the next meeting, the last 10 minutes, if there's an area of that you need more support with, for example, then we could probably discuss it and support you that way. Does that make sense? Because you've already got a couple of approaches.
Lots of nodding heads there.
Thank you. Pardon?
Lots of nodding heads. That's a good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Mills.
Yeah, there's a couple of items that were listed in additional topics not yet scheduled, so I think it'd be good to, it's a big conversation, perceptions of community safety, which I know you've been working on because of the consultation, etc. Support for young people, again, very important, and we touched on it today, so I'd like to see them actually go on the schedule. And we have to also be mindful of the fact that changes again in May, so we can't necessarily preempt what a new panel from June onwards might want to be discussing, but we can put them on the schedule and then they can review, whoever's on the panel at the time can review it at the time. But you mentioned, James, about other changes, but that's another one we need to take into account.
James, you want to come in there?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Mercer's point, reading this in advance of the meeting today, it struck me, it talks about the 24-25 work programme, and the panel has always sought to look beyond that, beyond just the year it's in, maintain a rolling 12-month programme. But Councillor Mercer is also quite correct that it's anything that the panel says now, well, we think this would be a good topic for September next year, would be subject to agreement or rejection by the panel that's in place from May. So it both is, the intention is to have a work programme that runs longer than just the current civic year. The reality is that it is and it should be the panel of the time that sets the work programme.
Thank you. So we've got Andre and then Dorothy.
Thank you. Just a quick question to the Commissioner. Out of interest, how many people are registered disabled who work for police and fire, out of interest? And in terms of attracting and retaining the best staff that we possibly can, have we thought about reaching out to multi-agency areas, so not solely looking as employed police or employed fire individuals? I'm talking not frontline, I'm talking resources from the office perspective. We also have a public sector which is full of people in different places, and can we work smarter?
Well, if we have a focus on recruitment and retention, that would obviously feature in that, isn't it? Could I make a suggestion to you, Chair, and James, about the work programme? We've got 3 missions in here. It might be interesting for you to keep an eye on how that's going to be played out. I don't know if you'd like to put one of each one of those missions into the work programme. That might be one way of being able to understand what we're doing and the challenge that is needed to help us perform at a high level.
And the registered disabled?
So I'm not going to give you a number off the top of my head on that, but it's a good point raised that we should be looking at the full spectrum of diversity issues. I know a lot goes on in policing to understand and respond to the needs of neurodiverse colleagues, because I think that's been a real shift in awareness in all of our workplaces, hasn't it, over recent years. So it's definitely a good area of focus, and I think a problem-solving dive into how do we get the representative workforce that we need is a good notion. I was going to come in on the big conversation. I can resolve that as an offline matter for you if you like, by sending you all a thrilling 100-page read on, which is the consultation report. It's a really good document, and I think you will enjoy it. So I can simplify your agenda. And then the last thing for me was just a note of thanks to your terrific new monetary officer, and to James as well. He met with me and my team to talk about how we can simplify any of the working arrangements. If there are things we're doing for you that aren't valuable, why are we doing them? How can we get you the work programme, the work package that you need? So thank you.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Maxwell.
I'd quite like to do something which may not be relevant, but however it is relevant, which is what happened this month, is the aspect of women, but not just women, but boys, being abused. And I'd quite like to do something which we would find out more information about how it's actually handled and why are the numbers creeping up on this. I don't know whether it's relevant or not.
I think that is possibly a briefing from the Commissioner, I think, at some point. James, should we come in there?
Yeah, I mean, a general point coming off the back of Councillor Maxwell's panel should also be aware that it has different working methods available to it, and could include. It also has the opportunity to use a combination on the same area. So an example, for example, is with the development of the draft budget. The Commissioner's proposed precepts. Panel's due to have a workshop, a briefing session at the start of January, which will inform it in carrying out its statutory scrutiny role at the formal panel meeting at the start of February. And I think a point coming out of that as well is a challenge that can be made to any scrutiny body, and the panel is fundamentally a scrutiny body, about are the means that they're using to achieve a particular task. So if what the panel wants to do on a topic is find out some information about it, then that doesn't or it doesn't necessarily or possibly shouldn't need to be an item at a public panel meeting. There are other ways of doing that, whether that's circulating something in writing, putting on a session, and I think that the challenge is that whether the panel is using the time spent at its formal public meetings to gain information, or is it using that time to use information to provide informed scrutiny?
So, just picking up with the work programme, so one of the things that the panel asked for is at some point to have kind of meetings with the two chiefs, because I think that would be really helpful to see, kind of get a view from them about the challenges. And we said we do it in a very supportive, understanding Commissioner's role and function. It's not about interrogation, but it's more about kind of getting together in that partnership way and understanding if there's pressures there in the system that we could support in some ways, there's something that we can work together on. That's what I think the intent was, and I just wondered where we'd got with that in actually setting that up.
So I thought I got through a whole meeting without saying. You're clear on that division between the operational and the strategic, but we said that we'd look for events that involved the senior officer team that were more about briefing and understanding than about bringing them in here, and that's what we'll do. But that said, bringing Adam in today, member of the top police team, to talk about one of the really fundamental areas of reform is a good idea too. So yeah, keen to keep the lines clear, but also keen to understand the context.
Absolutely know where it is, it's just
Okay.
kind of doing
I'd be disappointed if I'd gone away without saying.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've agreed on the content of that work programme then after. Should we leave to James? Do you want to?
So I think we just have a bit of a recap to clarify. So it sounded as if the panel was saying it wanted to do something on recruitment and retention in relation to policing, and fire and rescue. The suggestion, or Miss Woodhouse raised the point about having an item on panel meetings, what we might call the wicked issues faced by the Commissioner. There was the suggestion back from the Commissioner that the panel might want to look at the progress with the 3 missions, and I don't know whether there's scope to roll those into one, so the panel might have an item on a particular mission and that could cover what was being done, but possibly also what was being challenging in those areas, and that might possibly also perhaps take. I don't know whether the panel wants to continue receiving the standard office delivery update. It could, or that might possibly be something that could be rolled into a mission-themed item as well. I'll put that on the table for you to say what you want to do. It's not for me to.
Okay, cool. The delivery update usually is for the whole plan, and bear in mind, the Commissioner said the 3 parts, but I think, the number of meetings we have, if we did one part in each meeting, we wouldn't get through it the whole year, so I think it might, useful to perhaps separate into the 3 parts, but at one meeting when we do the delivery update, otherwise we'll get to the end of it.
So, sorry, are you saying you want a delivery update to each meeting that runs across the piece?
Well, when we do the delivery update, just have a delivery update on each separate section, but not have 3 separate meetings where we discuss just a third of the delivery update, because otherwise it will take too long to get through the whole thing. Just basically have what we have now. And just,
Can I just? I think it's really important that the whole plan there is a delivery on the whole plan. But the trouble is the whole plan is so big that actually we could just be talked to quite a bit with a lot of words, and it doesn't give us time to dig into it. So I think there is something about a very high level, here's the whole plan, but then a detailed discussion on one of the three elements, because we really need to get into the key bits that they're delivering. So for me, I think you're right. I think that every meeting we need a very brief overhead of what the whole plan is doing, but I think we need to focus in and ask our questions specifically on an element of it each time. Otherwise, we won't have time to go into the whole plan because we will be here a week if we're.
I think even doing that, I think we're going to be challenged, aren't we? So it's almost some of the work outside of this full meeting, isn't it? I think that's where way back when I first came as a chair, we were talking about that, and a lot's happened since. So I think we've got to try and get back to that. It's the business done outside of this meeting which we need to look at. So maybe it's back to that. We did talk previously about pre-meets and things like that. I just think maybe we just have a bit of a reset now. Because we've clearly got a bit of clear water at the last there really is. So.
Can I just make a suggestion, Chair? Because I'm obviously having a background in strategy and everything else, and it is a lot through. Why don't we agree that a panel member or two panel members take an area each and actually look at it and talk, brief, and then when we come to the meeting can brief other members to say, okay, we've had a look at this in some detail, this is the progress so far, this is where it's working really well, this is where these areas I think we need to focus on. It just might get the panel to focus down on things rather than having a big, and we could, you don't have to go over in depth, but it would mean that, I mean, I'm happy to do it, but if there's a couple of panel members each that could take an area and say, okay, let's look at that in some interest, that might help in actually rolling things forward and actually getting us to the point of actually what is the issue. If everything's working great over here, while we're looking at that, let's not go down that rabbit hole, let's actually focus on what is actually we need to. Just a suggestion.
That's really, because I was thinking about that earlier, when people are asking detailed questions about fire, other people are asking detailed, should some of us focus on fire, should some of us whichever you're, again, because if you're all trying to focus on everything, you don't focus on anything.
That's a good practice actually.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. It's how you feel.
That's how really these panels should work. You sit and you read through it. And so I think to do that, because then we can get some pace in it. Because I think certainly in the early days when I sat in the meeting, not chairing or whatever, sometimes the pace was just too slow. And we are all busy people, and we need a degree of sort of drive to it to actually feel that we actually get something as well. So that's a good idea.
I just want to say quickly, I'm really pleased that the police crime commission has actually agreed that we actually meet the police and the fire, police constable, chief constable, and the fire, because I think they need to know who we are. Because at the moment they don't even really know who we are, although we make decisions, or we may make decisions or be influenced. But I don't think they realise that we are interested in what they're actually doing.
Well, I think certainly when you get out and about on various events, and I've bumped into both Ivan on a number of occasions and Nikki as well. So they're good times to actually.
Yeah, but if you're not a councillor, for example, like myself, you don't know about those events, and I haven't seen Nikki since she's been recruited to the role.
So anyway,
it's not really good.
We've got that agreement anyway. Okay.
Okay, and does the panel still want to pick up the issues of the topics of the big conversation and support for young people as meeting items? I know the Chief Executive said that could be done in writing, but it sounds like there are areas you'd like to have the time at meetings to deal with.
I think we should have it on there. I think that receiving that document, reading through it, I think we probably feel a lot more informed, right? Because you can say 100 pages. It's like any consultation, but when you read through the responses, it's actually really interesting. I find you do actually learn something.
And does the panel want to continue receiving the 2 standard finance updates?
Yes.
Okay.
I think everything the same. It's just about
and possibly the point that Miss Woodhouse made about the Commissioner being proactive in coming forward to discuss challenges, wicked issues with the panel, that could possibly be made a theme rather than something specific, a specific piece of work, because that could inform virtually everything. When the panel's having its delivery update, which is focusing on a particular progress with a particular mission. The Commissioner could be encouraged to speak to the panel about, well, this was going well, but these were the challenges she was experiencing, and she'd appreciate the panel's input in dealing with a particular challenge.
Just on the finance updates, would it be useful, certainly we all sit in council meetings and you get your cabinet members ask questions, would it be useful to have put in some written questions before, because mostly they can answer those questions, but again, to get a bit of drive and speed into the meeting.
I agree.
We do them through the chair then.
Yeah, fully agree.
How would you better do that?
Specifically on the finance updates.
Not just on anything that we've read, because they might have an answer if...
I think maybe on in general as well, because we're here to, we are the Commissioner's critical friend. In order to be critical, they need to know what, so they need to get it. We're not there to catch out. The Commissioner, actually, we're here to help. Maybe us answering the questions prior to meetings would actually assist the Commissioner with a better job, an equal job.
Well, it would be a simple matter then for members to send questions to the Secretariat, which basically means Diana and I.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. And then what we could also do is, if there are several members who want to ask questions on the same topic, then we can produce a consolidation. So you're getting all the points captured, not 4 questions asking the same thing.
Yeah. Which again is exactly the guidelines for panels is to do that. So I think that would be good practice and guideline effectively.
And did the panel want to pursue the point about giving individual panel members a rapporteur, a link member?
Yes,
role?
definitely.
It will take some further thought, but as a principle,
fully support that.
Clearly indicating that.
Sorry, Chair, the other thing is the latest Majesty's inspection of fire and rescues out for Northamptonshire, and I'm wondering if when we're going to pick some of that up, because obviously the overarching, although there's improvement, there are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 areas, 3 that require improvement, 8 that just are inadequate, and one's good. So, and there's a possibility at some point we need to, as a panel, probably have a look at that and see if that's something worth picking up or putting prior questions to the next meeting.
Yeah, I think all of that. I think all prior questions around any of these things makes it easy.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. So that means
It's just a quick one. Is it possible then in future that the pages either we're doing 17 or 53? Because I think that
we had an unusual challenge this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it was a bit iffy.
It's generally worked after the how many 3-4 years. So there's always
I'll just throw out something that I haven't discussed with anyone, but the time of the meetings, whether it's suitable. When we first started, it was 2 o'clock, and then when we took on fire, because it was obviously going to be challenging to fit everything in, we moved it to 1 o'clock. Now it's 12:30, which is over lunch, so it's a bit difficult. So I just wonder whether anyone else finds that a bit of a challenge.
I'll give you a very simple answer to that. I don't think it matters when you do it. We just end up going from meetings to meetings to meetings, and I sit in the car eating sandwiches as I'm driving. So I think it makes very little difference.
Don't tell the police that.
Well, I won't tell the police that, no.
The virtual sandwich,
yes, virtual sandwich.
Sorry, Chair, just on the finance, I've not been part of the panel long enough to know, but is there a significant difference in the finances between each meeting, or do we need to give it like every other meeting? Because if it's only a couple of pounds that's changed in a 3-month window, because we're talking about really top level budgets here, they're not going to change an awful lot.
They shouldn't.
Normally a 6-month review and a yearly review should be sufficient at this level, rather than every single meeting. Would just be my suggestion.
Yeah, it's
not
it's
correct.
It's not
every budget's are set and then that's it. Extraordinary comes along. So
So a normal pattern for the finance updates would be you get them in. They'd come to the panel meeting in June, July. They come to the panel meeting in September. You then have a meeting in December. You wouldn't get them to the February meeting because that's focused on the proposed precepts, and then you would get them in a spring meeting, so March or April time. So it's not that you're not getting them on a monthly basis. It's slightly more than quarterly.
That's fairly regular.
Yeah.
I would say if they're set in April, we should be assessing them in September, reviewing the precept in February, and that should be enough.
Yeah.
Unless there's
If we're trying to create some space on the agenda.
Leave it as it is.
Again, it could be a document that's just circulating.
Oh yeah. So you would want a finance item in September, a mid-year up. Would that be mid-year? A finance item in September, and then the precepts.
A half year, and then the precept update, effectively, the precept report.
And when do we get the performance data? Because the finance is interesting, but the performance data would be very interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to turn the video off?
That's it all.
Yes, I think that's right.
No, if the panel's deciding something, it needs to decide it formally.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just asking a question about the performance data and when we would be able to see the performance data, like we do the finance, to ask questions.
That's normally the plan update, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so the plan update, the delivery update, call it what you will, has in the past often included some performance data. I don't think the panel has ever reached a position where it's been entirely satisfied with the performance data it's getting, and over time, and of course this is under the previous commissioners rather than the current commissioner, the way performance data has been presented and what performance data has been presented has changed, sometimes from one panel meeting to the next. And the panel has the opportunity to say, well, this is the performance data we would like, this is how we would like it presented.
I mean, there is the Community Safety Partnership, which actually produces that as well. It's got a copy right here. Just with overall crime, for example, violent crime, murders, and everything's down other than real crime, funny enough, over 3 years.
Surprising.
So there's actually a lot of that data is out there. It's, again, it might be something that needs to be circulated to the panel, but it's moving all the time. But it actually, you look at the last 3 years on the CSP in the west, and it's, sorry, I can't speak for the north. It's actually a good picture.
But the data, when you interpret data, tells you a story, and it tells you where you need to focus. And as a panel, we might see something in the data that says, actually, that's quite interesting. Speak to the commissioner, and is that an area of focus?
Yeah, I mean, I think the community safety partnerships are actually, they're feeding that back anyway. So because the commissioner's the commissioner's office sits in that. So what we don't want to do is replicate something that's already been doing. But I think, having said that, things like the CSP data for the west and the north, I think that would just be really interesting reading. So I'm happy to, I'll send this to you, James, and we'll circulate this because it's an interesting document, and certainly the picture is good rather than bad.
Can I just make a point? At the last meeting, which we had, we were given some sheets of paper as we went into the meeting, and then at the end of the meeting they were taken off us. We hadn't had time to read them, and to me that's not satisfactory.
That was at
You've got the full document now.
Oh, that was it. That was it. Yeah. Right. And the other thing is the JAG people. You know, the people who went to the JAG meetings from the villages or parishes are feeling quite grieved at the fact that they don't have that anymore. So I think that was something that think about what they actually feel. So it's not just about us. We represent the villages and the towns, but they need to be part of that in a, you know, like they used to be. And I think
that's probably really casework for any councils as opposed to the business for this band.
Chair, the point that Dorothy's just made about the JAG meetings, it was something which I raised a long time ago with the previous chief constable. But in theory, it's just evolved into what Adam presented to us today. So we've moved on. Time moves on.
Okay.
So that presence, I think, is what Adam is talking about, and that partnership working is what Adam was talking about. So onwards and upwards with it, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So I think that concludes it. James, you want to say anything?
Thank you.
And if the panel is looking at the Commissioner's progress with her 3 missions, and one of those is visible and accessible community services, then that gives the panel an opportunity to pick up points about engagement with the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, so I don't lose any business. So I'll close the meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.